ladies and gentlemen, hi. It's very good to see you again. Okay, so, first of all, this is going to be part 2 of the podcast being back. Dang it. Because I still want to wrap up just some thoughts I had about the previous kind of installment of this world, which I don't plan to leave, by the way. I want to go back. I probably already mentioned it. But yeah, this is filmed first. So this is me the most like, oh God, oh, how did I do this? And what did I do? And oh no. So yeah, you'll have to forgive me for this part. And hopefully the first part was a little bit less janky, which is kind of probably for the best for introducing the podcast back into the ecosystem of our channel. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Impossible World podcast. Man, I want to reminisce so much and like talk about the whole nature of it, but I know I've already done it. Anyways, point being, camera was a little high, had to drop it. Also, who has a camera when doing a podcast? Weird shit. Well, actually, a lot of people now. In fact, most podcasts I watch happen to have a visual element to it. Why? I don't know. Most of the time, they're off just looking at the wall and looking confused. Anywho, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Okay, so, this fun fact is the whole reason why I wanted to start off the podcast again, more or less. It's always been like a sneaking thing in the back of my brain, which I was just like, this is a part of something that I greatly like to do, is talk to you guys about this, like, the crazy worlds that I build in my head. And as cringe as it might be, I find it very fun, and also I love the notion of you guys in the comments also telling me, like, ideas where you thought this could be changed or something like that. I know, surprisingly, I've been lucky enough to have an audience that actually has quite a bit of weird, creative people in here who like making stories just the same way as I do, except you guys have enough courage to commit it to paper, and me, I just take, I don't know, my brain just goes a mile a minute, I can't write fast enough. Anyways, so, ladies and gentlemen, today, I wanted to do my best, unlike the previous iteration of the story that we talked about, which was the kind of whole monster, weird, transform thing, which was kind of like an homage to, like, a friendship kind of story, as well as a monster movie kind of story, as well as kind of like this overarching like world shifting story, which is just a lot of kind of things in one basket, which I kind of like. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk you guys' ear off about an idea I had, of course inspired by many things, which I will talk to you guys about, of 2, maybe 3 things. The first thing being the age-old story of the Demon King. I'm sure you guys know it. You know it just by the name of it. It's this, yeah, I don't even think I need to go into it much, but yes, the Demon King. This, like, ultimate ruler who rules over everything. And, of course, in some perceptions, it's seen as this, like, monarch, this, like, absolute destroyer who guides, or who rules with an iron fist, right? Not quite what I want to go with in my story. Anyways, the story of course, the Demon King. Second thing is an Isekai, actually. Now, unfortunately, your boy is one of those people that absolutely love Isekais. I don't know why. I just like the notion of, like, so many things that are, again, a lot of them end up being the same, but a lot of them also have these fun tropes, which I love to pieces, like kind of like a smorgasbord of, like, a world filled with all manner of creatures and all manner of things that all have, like, massively different affinities and negatives, you know? So yes, I wanted to make a story where it's kind of isekai'd, where a main character is isekai'd. I know, gross. A lot of you guys are like, I'm sick and tired of hearing about these stories. The third thing is kind of like, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's basically like the notion of trainers, masters, and like students, and that kind of thing. Okay, so the premise. Okay, how do I set this up? This is the hardest thing, because it's so weird, because to me to try to echo what I see in my brain to you guys and actually have it like resemble even a slight echo of what I see is incredibly hard and puts immense pressure on your vocabulary and or ability to like structure things out, which I have less of a lot of those. The baseline story for this beginning part. Let's do that. So we're going to give you guys some baseline, and then we're going to fill in some gaps. All right. So how we're going to achieve this end of like kind of, we're going to start with the notion of the first thing I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about, which is the idea of an isekai, as well as a story that has to do with like a master and a student, or like a sensei or some sort of like teacher who kind of trains a person, right? So, the way I'm doing it is I kind of go galactic with it. And I know you guys are like, wait, Isekai? Wait. So yeah, to me, you guys could, again, if you guys don't know how this podcast really works, again, just a refresher, you guys can supplementary anything. I try to give you guys guidelines on what your imagination can kind of play with, just so you're not going absolutely rampant and we end up in completely different places. So yes, these are two routes you should go. You could go with this is super galactic and it's like the universe, or you could go with it being like gods and mythos and add a lot more ambiguity to it and let the viewers' imaginations play with whatever they want. But for me, I kind of see this as a weird galactic alien kind of test. Okay? Basically, I need 7 human beings to get taken to a special kind of domain / level based thing. You guys can be like, all right, sword art, kind of, but not really. We'll get into it. But anyways, I need these 7 characters to arrive there. So the second thing is I think it'd be really, really fun to have the world where these human beings from Earth got taken, for them to have kind of like this massive showcase. So essentially, 7 people from Earth get taken into this thing. We're going to come back to their story in a minute. But there's this giant like holographic kind of like screen that appears over each fundamental country in the whole world, saying basically that, hi, there are these evil bad guys who made this dungeon and who made this like bad level-based thing, and we basically need to crack it. So we've been going around the galaxy and actually taking different species and trying to put them into this kind of zone to try to get them to complete this trial. Now, the big bad enemy type that comes to mind is the Virelsi. I don't know why I thought of this, like, again, I didn't think of it, sorry. It's from Battleborn. It's from a game I used to play, but it's like this, there's like these gross sludge, black kind of tentacle, weird void monsters. Essentially, they made this kind of big bad place, except it's not really a big bad place. Think of it like a dungeon with many layers. Of course, this has been done before. I'm not claiming to be special in any way, but there are a few things I think I wanted to mess with this whole kind of isekai trope nonsense and all these things. So that's the premise. So everyone on Earth knows that basically they have 7 champions taken from each kind of place, and they're like, hey, these people are going to basically represent you in the thing. How do we choose them? Nobody really knows. Who cares? This is more or less irrelevant, okay? Because we're gonna get into what is more relevant. Anyways, so yes, 7 people get taken from Earth and put into this kind of dungeon level-based survival thing, except with the preconceived notion of there being already established things here. Basically, again, they're stuck at, like, let's say level 3. They're hard stuck at this level and they cannot progress. So aliens have been like running around planet to planet trying to grab species and throw them in here to see if they can actually make the ball move. Maybe because these Virelsi, these evil beings, the thing that they're in constant battle with, are like this all-world destroying kind of thing, and apparently the secret to destroying them is in this kind of dungeon, this catacomb, whatever. So they're trying to employ the entire galaxy to kind of crack this code, and that's the way the kind of story overarchingly happens. Now, again, this is just like a baseline understanding. You could whip the whole alien take to be like gods and monsters in like millennia and centuries in that way, if you wanted. I'm going the alien route because I think it's kind of different and not done in isekais, but it is going to very much turn into an isekai, which is this kind of flavoring of this alien shittery on it. Okay? Anyway, I'm selling it to you real good. Okay, so this is the one thing that I really wanted to do with this, because to me this is a cool kind of concept and notion, but it's a notion of, okay, they grabbed 7 human beings on Earth. Well, and the whole goal is to get try to create the best of the best, to help them crack this code, crack this dungeon, this layered infinity kind of nonsense thing. So they take the 7 humans that they took from Earth, and they basically run them through like this whole trifecta of explaining to them what's going on. So after the introduction is done, they're kind of caught up to speed. They start showing them different trainers, basically. And each of them look incredibly different. One of them looks like, in my opinion, looks like an elf. The other one looks like a half elf, but it's like covered in like grass and tree bark and all these kinds of things. And you guys are kind of getting what I'm putting down, I hope. These kind of like fantasy tropes, and they're like the best of whatever they are, kind of. So there's again a one that looks like an elf and looks like a druid. There's another one that looks like half lava, half whatever. And basically, these aliens are like, okay, now basically you're going on a general kind of field trip real quick, and you get to see what each and every one of these things capabilities are. So there are some that are more boring, which is just that they're amazing at like speech and like swindling people and all these kinds of things, or just like getting their way, charms and stuff like that. And then there's another group of people who are really good about like the earth and archery and all these kinds of things. Then there's another people who are really, really efficient with magic. And then there's another kind of like teacher who's really good at like assassin kind of stuff. And the last one that they actually showcase is this sorry, the last teacher that they actually show is this dude who is covered in thick fucking armor that looks somehow old and also incredibly technologically new at the same time. And he makes no sounds, and he doesn't make, the only sounds he makes is like grunts. And he basically yeah, so again they basically teleport all the 7 in a group to basically see each teacher. Now when they get to the last teacher, it's this guy, again, like I said, he was clad in armor, dead ass silent. He's just a fucking beast of a dude. And they show him what he does in his world. So they bring you to his world, and his world is just blood, guts, bones, like stinking corpses of all that kind of shit, and he's just chewing through people. So the other kind of guardians had this kind of thing where some of them were like, hey, this is my combat prowess, look at me. This is my affinity for like understanding ruins. Ooh, this is my ability to kind of like charm and get my way. Ooh. Here's me like making potions from the earth, and I'll train you to do that and all these kind of things. And then the last one is just complete and utter bloodlust, like just breaking, rip and tear. So, ladies and gentlemen, for such a long time, I've loved, after playing Doom Eternal, a video game that I very much enjoyed. They built up this kind of this god called the Slayer, which is also known as the Doom guy. And to me, I always thought, wouldn't that be fucking sick? So that's the notion. That's the whole reason why I went after. Like, I thought that I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, where I could have my kind of like. Basically, I love the notion of being trained by the best, to where like if you even utter who your teacher was, everyone's just like, we're done. We don't want, even if you're 0.1% half as good as he was, I'm out. I'm dead. So to me, I always love that notion. It's kind of like a way to kind of be like, yeah. Anyways, so we're just gonna pile on. So again, one of the things that they're showing is that this guy is just relentless. Like nothing, again, it comes even close to making a dent in this guy, but he's silent except maybe a couple grunts, and just his relentless like breaking of bones, like that. But the person inside the suit is just dead. Like it seems like almost like a ghost. Being piloted like a wraith. One of the things that they talk to, and again, every single one of the 7 humans that are on this thing, except for one, are like, not say every single one of them, are fucking terrified. They're like, what the fuck? We just looked at an elf who showed us how crazy archery can be, and how fast she can be, and how she's like a beautiful green world. And then there's this guy who's just like this, just God in heaven. Who the fuck would want this? And then the person who's kind of like guiding them, like their tour guide, who's like, hey, we're just trying to train you up. Who's going to be your teacher? You get to choose. And of course, he at the end of every single time he introduces one of the teachers, he introduces them like, okay, she's really good about making this, that. You'll be hard pressed to come out of this training kind of camp without being really, really survivable. So no matter where you are, you'll be able to eat and just flourish, basically. And that's what the person does. The like tour guide is trying to sell like each one of these people. And as soon as he gets to this one, the tour guide just hates it, because like his world is just pain and suffering and blood. So he's like, fuck, this sucks. I hate doing this one. Anyways, so when he finally comes to a close, and again, most of the teachers are like talking to them, explaining to them what they're doing and why they're doing it. And Doom Guy doesn't say anything. So the Slayer doesn't say anything. So he's just this like relentless force, and the tour guide doesn't say shit, and until they finally get to the end of his blood, like his rampage, and he says, I'll be honest, guys, this is not it. This is not it. There has been no person in the known universe who has ever completed this guy's training arena, training thing. Not one. So we would highly advise. It's just a bad idea. It's just a bad idea to go train with this guy. There's literally no one who survived in the entire universe, and we've been at this for a long time. And that to be the kind of sentiment is just for this. There's the notion of being like, this dude is like. Yeah, and then further, I'm not sure if I want to squeeze this in. I want to squeeze this in as like a later comment, but I want the aliens because eventually they're gonna put the 7 human beings in the dungeon, essentially in this big ass dungeon. It's less of a dungeon, more of like a, how do I put it? It's like, I'm not sure what you guys have seen, but there's certain shows where it shows. It's like a dungeon, except it's like a whole world, like a level, like a big ass forest with a big sun, big open air, and there's this giant door in it, and that door takes you to the next phase of the dungeon. So yeah, it's less of like a cave, and more of like, no, these are worlds, very much similar, I guess, to Sword Art. Sword Art would probably be the best kind of perception of it, but this seems like it's gonna go a big different route than Sword Art, let me tell you. Anyways. So I wanted for that to be the sentiment, is these aliens that were talking to Earthlings, explaining to them, oh, how are they going to open this door and all these kinds of things. And one of the things that they talk about is how the Slayer is the most the most feared person in the entire galaxy, which is why I wanted it to be galactic and not spiritual, because I wanted it to be this thing of no, every single person in the galaxy couldn't make a dent in him. So terrifying, fear, big oof, yikes. So anyways, I'm sure you guys know where this story is going at this point. There's one character, a boy, of course. I may be subverting my expectations and trying to vicariously live in this weirdo world, but honestly, it's also not like that. Let me get into it. But after each one of these people, and again, it's kind of some mix, but there's some dudes who were pulled from Earth. There were some women, or some girls, etc., also pulled. So each one of them are basically picking their person, and so eventually, after the end, each one of the trainers, the teachers, are standing around, and the tour guide's basically like, okay, well, now that you know the details, again, talking about how this person's good for this, that person's good for that, the Slayer is good for nobody, it's just a nightmare, choose your candidate, choose your trainer, and everyone starts walking towards each person. They're pretty far back, and then there's this one character that's just this boy that's just kind of stopped there, and he's kind of not moving. Everyone's very much going towards, they immediately knew where they were going, and this one character kind of sits there, and then the tour guide even let's say that the tour guide even asks him hey, are you okay? I know this is a lot to take in, and the character takes a deep breath and takes a step towards the Slayer. And to me, that's the sentiment. That's the huge thing, and that's why, to me, having a sensei and all these kind of things, a teacher. Again, I think it's cool that if you mention your teacher's name, the whole world just basically is fuck it, we'll leave him alone. It's too much. I like that sentiment, but what I like even more is the training that comes with showing how this person became so strong, and being able to see that oh. If this person, they'll be hey, do 100 push-ups, or no, do 10,000 push-ups, and then the main character is fuck that, that's impossible, and then of course it kind of foreshadows what the main person, the legend, the teacher can do and does. So it shows that by teaching a student, you therefore understand the teacher almost. So I really like that kind of sentiment, and I really like that way of kind of. For a person who is voiceless almost, who barely says anything, the Slayer, for this to be a way to kind of show who he is, how he feels, what he's done to become what he is. I always like this. Now, with that being said, though, this is a very, very small part of the story. In fact, this is something that we're going to foreshadow back to occasionally. But yeah, I would tell you guys the beginning part of it, but then we're going to hard cut to basically them being there. But yeah, they kind of get, it's up in the air. They kind of get, maybe some take 7 months, maybe some take as much as 2 years in their like respective world domains to train up for this domain, but they all kind of arrive at the same time. And for Earth, it feels like seconds, but for them, it could be anywhere from like a month to, again, a couple of years, 2 years. Let's say at the most. Let's not go crazy. Anyways, let's not put even a time limit on it. But anyways, this is also a story of the Demon King, except if you guys know me, I love monster movies and I hate to pieces when it's just so cut and dry, like, oh, the monster was evil, the end. I find it incredibly boring and just like a hollow story. So of course, this is how the Demon King wasn't. We'll get into it. We'll get into it when we get to the next part of it, the next section of kind of the playtime in your mind about me like giving you a bunch of shit for your imagination to chew on, which is what these are, by the way. Again, the impossible world is just to fill your mind with a bunch of weird ideas that I've been thinking about every second of every day because I can't turn off my brain. Sucks to suck for me. Anyways, so yes, the main character takes a step forward towards the one person, and then let's say because the aliens were trying to be like hospitable and trying to not like to ease tensions, they had like a human looking person writing down like a classic secretary kind of tour guide person. So as soon as he sees you take a step towards the Slayer, his clipboard and etc. drops to the ground, and then he kind of gets like thrown back a while, and he's like, wait, are you sure you want to do this? As the main character keeps taking steps forward. Now again, to explain the main character's thought process on this, the aliens and etc., or like not the aliens, the aliens, the secretary, when he was running down everything, he talked about how there is this threat inching closer to each one of our worlds, and if you don't fix it, then we're all fucked basically. So this is a matter of life and death for you to be able to actually do this. And they also explain that like progression has more or less stopped when it comes to going through this dungeon, more or less. So the main character thinks, oh shit, I have my family that I love to pieces, I have all these things, I don't have the luxury, and also I have all of humanity on my back. I can't like choose the path of what would be nice. Like the path that would be nice is there's like an elf that looks like she could show me how to shoot arrows. There's a path of an assassin who looks like they could do that. There's a path of a hero, of a man who has golden locks, has a crazy good smile, and looks like he rules a kingdom. Yeah, why don't I go with one of those? But the main character has the realization again of I can't choose the path that is easy. I have to choose the path that can maybe give me the ability to save the people I love back at home, you know? So that's his thought process. It's like the most, it's like a very, very realist thought process of, okay, if I'm gonna bet on anybody, this guy, unless the like, I don't think, like, again, his world is chaos incarnate, and they don't really, I want them to know that they don't really talk about the guy and like that he is like the strongest entity in the whole universe. I don't want them to talk about that. I kind of want that to be just like a subliminal thing, but for the main character to kind of put in his mind, no, this guy compared to every one of you, whether like you can have a lot of diplomatic ability, a crazy charismatic person, but if you have so much of another thing that it doesn't even matter about any of that, like if you have so much strength, force of will, power, that it doesn't matter how charming you are, when I don't have to charm shit, I could just take every single thing in the world from you, because I have that level of whatever. It's kind of an answer that answers every question, but maybe not in the nicest way, but it still gets you the whole thing, you know what I mean? So it's kind of playing around with that idea. So anyways, the main character takes a step. Everyone is kind of blown away, because let's just say they've kind of mingled. The 7 humans were kind of like, they woke up and they're like, what the fuck's going on? They talked a little bit, and then of course this kind of advisor came down and explained to them what's going on. But in the meantime, this boy who is kind of I love the notion of this, there being like this, it's just shocking. That there's like this kid who seems to be a little scrawny, not very like charismatic, but nice, a kind-hearted person would go into this big of an ass beating. So he, like, the main character basically was like, hi, how are you? It's good. This is crazy. What's happening to us? I hope you're okay, or no one hurt themselves. All these things. Like, an incredibly caring, loving person is going to become this fucking monstrous demon king, which I love the sentiment of. And I say monstrous. It's not really monstrous. We're going to get to that in the next part of this. Anyways, so yes, the main character is mingled with the other people, and when he takes a step towards a Slayer, they're all blown away, because he's like the last person that looked brave. In fact, the bravest of all the 7 humans from Earth, whereas there's one, and of course he takes a step towards the hero, the knight and his the whole thing. So he takes a step towards the hero's path, and of course this guy, who looks like the one that's the least courageous, the least that, but very nice and kind and down to earth, takes a step towards this fucking obliterator, this world devourer. And everyone just kind of like, what are you doing? Like, this is stupid. And then the main character, in like a very, again, I wish you guys could see it in my head, because it's like this small, let's say, yeah, a little small, like, they're all the same age, more or less. Let's say they're all the same age. They're all the same age, but he's like fragile looking, like he looks very delicate. And they're all looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, do you have a death wish? And he kind of very quietly, almost meekly, like tiny person, kind of like doesn't have a great strong voice, but he says in the most like clear as day, like makes sense way that like, this is my best hope. Like, this is our best hope. And you guys are betting on 20% success, 30% success. I'm betting on 1000% success if I can do it, if I can endure. And he says that in a very quiet, like bleak voice, and takes a step forward and looks up at this fucking just brute of like the Slayer. I see him exactly as the Slayer in the Doom games. And again, the Slayer doesn't say almost anything throughout his whole time of training him. Let's not say that. He just says very few words. But like in this moment, the Slayer almost has like a spark. Like, okay, this kid might be it, because that's the thing. I want it to be kind of like this subliminal thing, is the Slayer in the back of his mind. The people who do come to him are like angry. They're angry. They want blood. They're cruel. They're like, yeah, I want to hurt things just like you do in your world. And they can kind of tell that, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, I already know the answer to this. Sure, I'll train you. But for once, this person, this little tiny guy, he has like, okay, you have the courage to maybe to endure this, like I did. So just like that, again, this tiny, skinny, very fragile looking kid. Again, the main character, when he was talking to them, conversing with them, he was kind, gentle, and all these things. Considerate, I'll say. Anywho, so then they're all sent off. They're all sent off into the respective areas. And again, this is something always fun to do in storytelling, because you can come back to each one of these people and see what they've been through, what their training was like. But, of course, we're going to follow the thread of our main character, which is this tiny boy who just basically followed this destroyer into hell. The Doomslayer into hell. Again, this is very much me like playing with ideas that I'm sure you guys know about immediately. But anyway, I'm having a fun time anyway with it. But that's storytelling, man. That's like, again, you don't have to... I say Doom guy just so you guys get a better understanding of what I see when I see him, but I could just dissolve all that and make him like a different thing, and then that's basically it. Again, you don't want to copy, but you do want to, like, again, the idea of there being this like this being of pure wrath and vengeance that actually, like, you wouldn't put it together, but he actually is a human, and no one ever knew what he was, but he is actually this human being that had to basically take on this unrelenting force that came to his planet and won. It turns out the force that came to his planet and won was something that was under the power rating of the whole galaxy. So by beating it, he beats everything in the galaxy. Anyways, getting a little ahead of myself. Forgive me. We'll have a little tea break. I have coffee on standby. I did not abandon you, coffee people. So now at this point, I don't know if I would, like, if I was writing a story, if I would just pivot to them like coming out the other end. Yeah, like, again, this is all kind of being like slightly filmed / captured in any way and like relayed to the people on Earth, and so Earth knows that these are their like champions. And then they see them like what kind of person that they chose, and then it kind of goes dark for 24 hours, and then they kind of the program, whatever, kind of turns back on, showing them arrive at the place. And of course, as they arrive, there's this giant like teleporting wormhole that kind of spews them all out. And of course, each one of them that gets like plopped out now has vastly different characteristics. So the one who went with the elf now very much looks like an elf, and it's kind of like a thing where whichever person you went with, you kind of like you're like in their world, so your body almost starts sucking up the same matter that made them how they are. So you gain the same somewhat characteristics that they are from their world, and yeah, so that's kind of like this passive thing that I think would be fun. Regardless, regardless, that's one way you could do it. So each one of them kind of gets spit out, and they kind of like land on their face, land on their knee, like slide in from their side. Nothing graceful. They kind of just get plopped out. And then some of them stand to their feet and they're kind of like, oh man, that's a rough landing. And then they look around and they count, and they only count 6. So then a lot of them are like, what a dummy, the main guy, or that one guy, of course he died. He's like, no one ever, what was he thinking? It's so sad. I was thinking about that the whole time. Some of the girls were like, I was thinking about that. It was fucking me up. We're gonna, like, this moment exactly was gonna happen. We're gonna get out here and he's not gonna be here, and it's just like a waste. Hard cut. Hard stop. So that's a route you could take, and of course something's gonna happen in seconds, because you guys know me at this point. But this is another route that I think I would want to take as well, and I might do both. Like, the main character might like just pop in, like land gracefully where they all fucked up and failed and looks like a beast, and then hard cut back to like what happened in the time from this to that. But anyways, regardless, hard cut back to when he goes into the Slayer's world. So this is going to be a lot of me jumping around, because it's just, and you guys can fill in the spaces if you want. But yeah, by the way, I have filled in the spaces. I just, to explain it would be a lot of like weird shit, and also I'd have to like figure out how they would talk to one another, and to me that's always less than like the actual points that matter and make things impact. Now, the dialogue is not important, just that that's something that you do after I think you have the general idea of how things are, and like how the cadence of a character would speak, and how those words could echo a personality, and etc. So the Slayer basically takes him into his world, and again, it's just hellfire, and of course he has this giant castle that's just bathing in fire. Fast forward, he basically shows him around, shows him like his castle, his place, again without really speaking. He kind of just walks around. The minute the character kind of stops and like takes it in, like, holy shit, this is like, this whole place is just a nightmare. The Slayer kind of like grunts, like to tell him like, come on, let's go, but like doesn't actually say it. Anyways, starts taking him around, shows him every place, shows him his quarters, his room, which is basically this tiny room. It doesn't have much in there. A bed. Bear looks militaristic, like very much like, hey, this is it. This is all you get. Of course, the main character, let's just say he goes to sleep that night, like in his room, and he's like, fuck, did I make the wrong choice? Like, this is a lot. Like, as much as like, again, this was the only choice to make if I want to keep my family and etc. safe. And let's just say that. Also, single-handedly, the human, like, Earth is being like, almost like a talk show is being like talked about like what's happening. So when the main character goes forward and chooses the Doom guy as his teacher, the alien commentators are basically like, oh, he's dead, he's absolutely dead, like there's no hope, he's fucked. Oh, this is really, we hate to see it, we're so sorry, Earthlings. The guy tried to do his best to tell him to not go there. And then the family members of the boy are like, don't count him out just yet, because like, don't, like, he might be frail, don't throw in the towel just yet. I'll have faith. I'll wait until then. So it kind of echoes like, this kid is more than maybe what he just looks like, which I like a lot. He wakes up, and the Doom guy basically is like, all right, it's time to train. And this is where things get fucking brutal. And I only want to kind of like at this point, if I was writing a story, I would kind of just like sprinkle in like weeks, months, and then like, yeah, maybe like 5 months of kind of sprinkling in what's going down. But the first thing that the Doom guy does is he takes him into this kind of like giant, kind of like arena out in the world space. It has an open sky, but it's kind of like this giant, it's like a rib cage basically, like you're standing in the middle of a rib cage basically. So there's like, again, it's open to the sky, but there's still like these giant fencing around it almost. Anyways, in the middle of it has this black ass orb. So the Doom guy basically just grabs his hand and kind of drags him to like say, hey, okay, and then he puts his palm or his whole hand on this orb, and his hand kind of touches it, and then you hear like a big bing, and then Doom guy literally just walks away from the thing, and the main character's kind of sitting there like, what's happening? And then a big ass fucking, not a big ass, let's just say a hell dog, like this ravenous dog. I very much see it as like, if you play Doom, there's like hellhounds in that damn game, and those come and just fucking obliterate the main character. Just right there, boom, fucking gone immediately. But then seconds later, boom, it comes right back, and then you hear this woman voice saying 3, 2, 1, and then they spawn again. And the main character kind of puts it together. It's like, okay, well, this is good that I won't die. Like, I have a reset point. But the bad news is that I'm gonna have to keep dying. I'm gonna have to keep dying. But then eventually the character, and this is one of the things I want to like kind of happen, is for like there to be the Doom guy basically peeks on him and says, okay, he's still dying. And then like 2 hours later he peeks again, and he actually sees that the main character quickly understands, like, okay, well, I'm gonna fight then. Like, I'm not gonna just let these things keep killing me. I'm gonna try to find a way to beat them. Or like at least try to stay alive longer, because this way I don't feel pain. And that's kind of the difference. Like, a lot of these people who train don't actually have that as their teacher, which I don't want to glorify the perception of pain, but I do think it like does make sense as like, I went through this, so you think that anything you can do to me is worse than that, you know? So that's the sentiment. That's like trial 1 for him, is just basically dying on a loop and getting ravaged by these hell monsters, until finally he starts basically like somewhat fighting back. Like, he doesn't win, but he does make a dent. Like, he starts to like pick up a bone off of the ground from this like blood-stained arena, like this rib cage, and starts stabbing it into like one of their eyes as it's like gnawing into his leg. Like, I want some like metal as fuck shit. And each time he's able to like land a blow and like make them bleed. Their blood kind of lands on him and starts giving him just the tiniest bit of strength, and he feels it almost like every single time he slashes them and he actually gets their blood on him, he feels like this heat start welling up from wherever the blood is, like the tension building in his muscle when you flex. He feels that whenever it lands on him. Anyway, so the main character is constantly in this state, and finally, again, he starts doing things, and every single day, he finally gets out of that. And let's say that the Slayer points to the orb when he first enters the ribcage and says like touch it, basically, but without saying touching it. So the main character does it, hears a bing, and the Slayer walks out and it goes crazy. And let's say the main character goes to sleep that night thinking, what the fuck, that's terrible, that's the worst. This is awful, I'm an idiot, why did I choose this? And then the Slayer comes to his room and is like, let's go. So then they go to the thing again, and the main character almost like starts hesitating, like doesn't want to put his hand on the thing, so the Slayer grabs his hand and forces him to touch the orb. And it bings again, and then that's day by day. That's kind of what's happening. But let's say the fourth day. The Slayer doesn't need to grab his hand and force him to touch it anymore. The main character is almost like his mentality has changed really fast to being like, okay, like almost like he stayed up all night thinking about how he was gonna win, basically thinking about, okay, those fuckers want to try to eat my leg. All right, well, there's that bone it's right beside them, or if I get on their back, I bet I could like stay away from their teeth, and I could like, again, he's hyper thinking about how to seek victory, which to me is like the first glimmer of hope for the Slayer of like, okay, some would have just broken immediately, like, oh, pain, it's too much, I'm just done, I throw in the towel, I don't even want to live anymore, that kind of thing. But you, like, pain and like carnage has only sought to make you more focused and push forward with greater strength, like rather than just getting devoured. And then I want there to be like phases of like, okay, now it hard cuts. Like if I was writing a novel, it would hard cut to like 4 weeks into it. And at that point, things are unexplained, but now our main character is kind of popping off in a big way. He's hitting with like immense strength. His body is completely changed. Now he has got like fucking massive hands, and he's no longer a little tiny guy. He looks like a pretty heaping person. Not like a Slayer. The Slayer's still like fucking ridiculous, like ridiculously huge. But the main character is starting to like, he's popped out. Let's just say he gets like a huge strength buff. So now he's actually beating the shit out of the Hellion dogs, but again, they keep increasing like the difficulty of this ribcage, like just more enemies, bigger enemies, worse kind of creatures. And then I would just keep doing that, hyper cutting like weeks to eventually he starts wielding weapons, and maybe even the Slayer starts like hand-to-hand combat starts showing him, and of course he just kicks his ass every time. But that to be the thing, and then for it to kind of fade to black. But when you leave him, he basically has like this slight glimmer of like a orange in his eyes. And then he also has like this tiny bracelet with like another orange glow. So there's this orange glow kind of bracelet that he's wearing, as well as this slight glimmer in his eyes, and that's where the chapter would end into back to basically all the 7 that came to Earth, or that were taken from Earth, chose their teachers, and now they're transported to this domain, and they're all like spat out basically. Each one of them spawn in, kind of like some like land on their face, some land on their ass. Like they go through this wormhole and they basically just get like spat out. And all of them kind of get up and they're like dusting themselves off, and they're like, that was a rough landing. And then of course they're like, fuck, we're down 1 character. It's not 7, there's 6 of us. What a dumbass. How could he, like, of course, why would you choose that? Like, no one, like, you have that much ego that you think you're better than 90% of the people on Earth or in the universe. And just like, and as soon as they kind of start saying all that stuff, I think I would like it to detonate when one of the females is like, oh man, I was thinking about that the whole time, about like how sad this would be when we get out here and he wouldn't be here. And then I want there to be like 5, if you play Doom, they're like hell circles, like basically like it's like witch shit. It's like when you make a pentagram, it's like like 6 pentagrams kind of summon, and you just see this like him like spawn through all 3 and land perfectly on his feet. And except he's like steaming almost, because like, again, he just came from like a hell portal rather than this wormhole, because the Doom guy's tech is above everyone else's. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically the moment where like they finally see him. And again, like I mentioned, the last time we kind of talked about his kind of whole like training experience, he had this tiny little kind of like wrist watch kind of thing, which had like a glowing orange spark and like a crystal form. And then his eyes started having like this tiny like glimmer of orange. I kind of want it to be like this moment where like he does something that's amazing and like fantastic and like super like crazy even for the Doom guy. He's like, okay, now you're starting to get to the point where you need to be, where you need to go like beyond what you think normal, what is normal. And he has this tiny little glimmer of orange in his eyes, and then when he finally drops in, his whole left hand side of his arm is in this giant like steel gauntlet, and his eyes are permanently like this glowing orange. If you've played a game called Darksiders 2, the Grim Reaper Death, he has like these super bright orange eyes. And if you played a game called Overlord, you've also know exactly what I'm envisioning, because he has this giant gauntlet, and that's exactly his kind of power strain, amongst other things. But basically, whereas the Doom guy summons forth, or doesn't summon forth anything, he's just like a beacon of pure force. The main character kind of chose the path of like summoning. So he's like a summoner, plus like again, he was trained by the Doom guy, so he's just violence. He's like violence incarnate. So yeah, so now they're set onto this world, and ladies and gentlemen, this is where I want to kind of talk to you guys about where I want things to go. And yeah, this is going to be really, really different from what we just did, because I really want to get this kind of initial premise out of there. Everyone's kind of like, what the fuck, you survived the whole onslaught? And again, I want the main character to be like super bubbly, like the same person he was, except maybe now with like a little bit more confidence. Like he's less, like he doesn't speak quietly, he speaks more like he has a presence to him. He has this big presence to him. Anyways, he's super kind, shakes all their hands, wishes like, is like, oh, how did it go? And is just very charismatic in that way. I think I would like, or not, maybe not charismatic, but caring, like the ability to kind of like extend the olive branch and do that stuff. Okay, so now we're going to hyper-extend everything. We're going to start leaps and bounds. So we have this main character who is trained by the greatest slayer in the whole universe. Okay, and we have all these other people who are trained by good combat people as well. So they get to this dungeon, and they kind of arrive, and let's say that they're greeted by a guard. The guard takes them into this city, which is, they're in this like very foresty kind of area, and they take them to this city, and the city is kind of, I don't know, it to me kind of looks like it's kind of weird low poverty, but then there's some parts that seem like they're higher or less poverty rate. They get taken to this huge castle, and of course they meet kind of like this queen. And of course, when they first arrive, one of the people asks them to all kneel, because here's the queen. And every single person kneels except for the main character, of course, because he's like, what the fuck? And the main character has been kind of puzzled for this entire time, having walked through the city, having done all that. He's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you're supposed to be figuring out how to open this huge door, which I should have mentioned. There's this massive fucking door that you can see like far off in the forest. And he's like, why the fuck? What's happening? Like, what, we're supposed to be trying to breach this, and you all have to like set up shop and are just kind of chilling. Like, what the fuck's going on? And now, furthermore, you want me to bow to you? I don't even know who you are. Like, what? Like, this is not like I expected a general, not a fucking queen or some shit. So, anyways, the main character doesn't bow. And the queen kind of, again, the queen's not a bad person, I want to stress that, but again, there's this weird norm there. And the hero guy, like the guy who is trained by that knight, that hero, is, again, he's like the super annoyingly virtuous but stupid and gonna get people killed kind of character in this story. So he's kind of like, why aren't you bowing? Like, this is just greeting people kind of thing. And main character's like, we just got here, and she wants us to kneel when that's not our job. Our job is not to do that, and that's not her job. Her job is not to be the queen. Her job is to fucking open this damn door. Like, it's the main character's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, all these people have just thoroughly given up hope, it seems. And of course, massively fast forwarding, again, I want there to be this kind of weird contention where the main character is like very buddy with everyone. I want there to be a good relationship with the seven, but for them to kind of like be disconnected on how they want to execute certain things, to where they're like the kind of overarching sentiment is, let's just stay out of each other's way, and all try to fix the problem, and we can come together if we want, but generally speaking, if someone wants to go do something their way, let's not get in their way, kind of thing. Like that, like, sure, I'm gonna try my way, you're gonna try your way, hopefully we don't step on each other's toes, and let's try to work around it if we do, that kind of thing. So they're all under that kind of same understanding. But the main character is kind of like frustrated with them because they start playing like diplomatic shit, and he's just kind of like, this is not the fucking thing. Like, this is not the way, man. We're not supposed to be trying to play politics here. We're not trying to be we're not trying to smooge up to the queen. We're trying to open this fucking door. And of course, there's this one character, and I have this whole like this scene idea because one of the characters is like kind of high elf. She was trained by this like very charismatic high elf kind of lady, and of course it's a girl, and she's very like she's basically playing like the part as like the diplomatic, super into politics kind of character of the seven people, and the main character notices that she is also frustrated with them, but he's also surprised that she's frustrated. Like, she's frustrated because she seems like her environment, but also the main character I want to be like, the only thing that the main character has maybe above some of the other ones is that he's emotionally really smart. So he's able to pick up, and this is from his like previous existence on Earth, he's able to pick up on things that maybe other people aren't like noticing. So one of the things he notices from this high elf, this really tall elf with pointy ears, and she's like dressed in like a business suit and shit. He notices that she hates being alone, like a lot. And it's because she wasn't trained in any sort of combat experience, so she has like no defensive capability, but she's really good at like making things fall into place, convincing people things, again, like the expert politician. So yeah, anyways, so he picks up on the fact that she doesn't like to be alone, so he basically asks her, like, when everyone kind of departs, to like go talk to the queen, to go talk to this, to figure out the outline of the ecosystem in the world, like the layout of this dungeon, like what's happening. Some of the elf goes and does that, and all these kind of things. He notices that everyone kind of splits up, and she kind of starts looking around to like, who should I follow? And the main character walks up and says, hey, do you want to go get something to eat? And he kind of talks to her about like, and he's really honest about where he's coming from, and they kind of share in this like frustration for how all these people don't seem to be really trying to solve the solution. They're trying to like help the poor, or they're trying to do this, and they're kind of like, this is not gonna actually help us. Well, first of all, let's say he infers and asks about like how, like, why do you seem like something's off when you're alone? And she explains, I wasn't taught how to fight, I was just taught how to basically be charming and do diplomacy and things like that. So then the main character says, I got you, and he gives her this pendant, and let's say that he even says, hey, just so you know, I'm a summoner. Like, that's my thing. This is a pendant where if anything ever tries to like put a scratch on you, it'll keep you safe. Not only that, but it'll also tell me where you are, so I can come and make sure, even if it's too much, I can wipe away the slate. So anyways, that's what she does. Also, you may be hearing dogs, forgive me. And as he gives her the pendant saying like, hey, this is your free pass for safety. Like, that you're always going to be okay if you wear this. And then she's just kind of asking, like, why are you doing this for me? Like, we don't even know each other that well, and all these kinds of things. She also says, I was one of the people who didn't even expect you to live. Like this says, I pick a better person to root for you. And the main character says, actually, I need you. And let's just say I would like that to hit the character pretty hard, where it's like, I need you, that kind of being the sentiment when he says that, because he says, he hates like diplomacy, like he fucking can't stand it, and he's like, you're really good at it. He's like, I have my strengths, you have your strengths, I need your strengths, I fucking have zero strength in this way. Also, I need you to keep me posted on what's going on around here, because like I said, he's very much planning on dipping the fuck out and fixing the problem that everyone seems to be kind of not really doing. So that's when they leave. And again, that's kind of like the relationship I want him to have with most people, with exception with the hero and the healer. There's this healer that very much looks like your stereotypical blonde healer, but she kind of gravitates towards the hero, who's playing like really, he's very chummy with the queen, he's talking to her and all these kinds of things. And then the healer kind of is terrified of him, generally, the main character, because his eyes are scary, and she just thinks like the Doom guy was terrifying and like a monster and like evil, because he was just the person who could rip and tear for anything. He interacts with each one of the 7 really well. Outside of maybe those 2, he has a little bit of contention with, just because they have such different ways of doing things, flawed ways of doing things on their part. Okay, so the second part of this is going to talk about the kind of Demon King aspect of it, and how another aspect of storytelling that I want you guys to try to filter your imagination through. Okay, the main character embarks into the city after he's done talking to them, and kind of everyone's off doing their own thing. And let's say the leader, established weird leader, is the hero. So the hero like can see that our main guy, Slayer Jr. is basically like hell bent on like actually going and doing stuff, and he's worried that he's gonna get them in trouble and like make this a whole problem for them. So he commands the like, let's say the elf, like the assassin-like character who's really fast, to try to keep watch on him, and she agrees. So anyways, he's moving through the city, and he gets like a really just weird vibe from everything. He sees that people, there's races of all kinds of people. There's orcs, there's half-elves, there's elves, there's all these kinds of people. There's like crosses between animals that he's never seen in his life. He starts seeing that there's these weird like groupings, like they're almost in like compounds, or however you say it. Like they're just grouped in this weird way. And also it's this weird sense, like this idea of poverty everywhere, but also some places they don't have any poverty, so he's just confused. It's just a weird layout. So anyways, as he's moving through the town, there's this man with a circular kind of fan hat, and for whatever reason he notices that this guy stands out. And again, our main character, even though he has glowing fucking red like or orange eyes and this giant like fucking gauntlet hand, he doesn't stand out because everyone looks kind of crazy. Everyone's like, some people have like mouse ears, or whatever. Some people who are like tiny half elves. But this one person stands out. So this older, like maybe guy in his 30s, is like sitting down with like this umbrella above him, this hat on, and he very much looks like an old Japanese Ronin. And this is going to talk about this other thing that I wanted to find a way to kind of introduce. Anyways, I'll talk about it in a minute. Anyways, he goes up and asks like what his deal with. Also, right beside him, sitting on like a tiny wooden box, is this kid with an arrow. It's like a younger looking guy who has like a bow, and they both look like they're from the Japanese era. You guys, I'm pretty sure, know what's happening. I'll talk about it in a minute. If you guys don't, they can see that there's something off about him. Like he's walking like with purpose, like he's just driven towards something. So they ask him like, "Oh, I haven't seen you around here. You're like, you're all this other stuff." I don't want to go into the dialogue again. I'm terrible at making up the dialogue on like in the moment. Regardless, or let's say the main character is walking and he looks a little upset. So the main guy sees that he's upset and asks, "How the hell?" or "Why does he seem like he has a stick up his ass?" or something like that. So the main character is just like, "Haha, yeah. It just seems like this is nuts. Like, why aren't people trying to unlock the door?" Basically explains that like everyone's stuck. Like the people have tried to open the door back in the day, but no one made a dent. So people eventually just set up their lives here. Like they're like, okay, we're never going to be saving our planet. We're never going to be doing that. We're just going to try to live our life to the best we can here. And like there's just this sense of like gray, this sense of like no hope in this city, like nothing. But the main character kind of fights back and says, "Hey, like I'm gonna do it." Again, I don't know how the dialogue would go, but essentially the main character communicates with him that like I'm gonna open it. I'm gonna get to the next part. And then the old guy kind of laughs, is like, "Oh, here's this like new guy who just arrived who thinks he's gonna change the world. I've seen him before," but he can't shake the fact that he can see. It's not about like his eyes. It's not about anything like that. It's the way he moves. To me, it's the same way that the Slayer moves, which is this like relenting force, this like with every step he is certain, and with every if anyone looks at his back, it's just like you know that the person will never be stopped. That kind of notion. So you can get this sense from him. Fast forward. After they kind of have a talk, he says that, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to change this world. I'm going to go ahead and open this gate that you guys seem to be have given up on. Also, that's something I want to talk about. He also asks, like, why is it so weird here? And he explains that, again, people have tried to make the best of this situation, but there's no real power structure here, because there used to be a power structure. It got displaced because a new race arrived who had better physical ability, and then there's a new race that came that had better diplomatic ability, and then things just kept getting weirder and weirder, and eventually basically there is the queen in this city, but then there are also mob bosses, these like the head of the high elves, the head of the orcs, the head of this and that. So there's like these different like heads of these gangs, and they kind of take solace in the fact that they're like representations for their people and etc. But the people who are getting like shit on are the races that don't have inherent strength, like elves, or sorry, like half elves, like tiny elves basically, and like goblins and shit, and what is it called, dwarfs and stuff like that. So all those kinds of races are kind of getting shit on because they don't have inherent strength. Or we're going to get to that in a minute. And then anyway, so the main character starts, like, he basically goes off into the forest. Outside the city, he walks out and just starts, like, just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And of course, the elf is chasing him, and really quickly, the main character immediately knows that the elf is on his ass. So he basically kind of like fucks with her a little bit. Like she loses him, and then he's like sitting on a branch with her, like immediately, like, and she's kind of like, what the fuck, how are you so fast? Like you're like, because again, I wanted it to be, I didn't mention it, but I think I mentioned it, but when he basically arrives and the other 7 humans or the other 6 humans see him, he's like super tall, super jacked now, because he's basically just been sitting in a hell loop forever, fighting to the death constantly, right? And he somehow hasn't lost himself in it. And I would like to get back into that a little bit, because there's a reason why he didn't lose himself in it, and the reason why he was able to actually push through where so many others couldn't. Because of this notion of, again, it wasn't that, like, either you lose yourself to rage, you lose yourself in the bloodlust, or you lose yourself in 1,000 other ways, but you need to know who you are and know what you want to be, and that is how you can push through that adversity and actually come out the other side. But also the Doom guy, his whole archetype of or thing is that he basically loved. He had like a family he loved, and he also had this little bunny that he loved. So if you have these things that you love that can keep you sane in a storm, then you can come out of the storm with a new kind of strength. And that kind of being the thing that the main character shares with him to some extent, this like heart that is able to actually endure. And this system, this bloodlust, horrible system that actually rewards that level of endurance. Anyways, so yeah, he kind of starts shitting on like the elf assassin person by like showing that he's like right beside her and he's just as fast, just as just that, like, for like, again, there's these moments where I want to show that like he is on the level of the Slayer. Like, he was taught by the strongest man in the whole universe. Of course he's gonna be fucking nuts in comparison to your nonsense, you know. Also, his level of training surpasses theirs by 1,000. Like they were like, yeah, some of their things were horrible. His was like their worst, their absolute worst was his easy, you know, and not his hard, right? So that's the kind of the sentiment. So it's not like an unjust strength. It's not like an Isekai where he just pops off. It's like, no, he earned each one of these. But if I was rating a novel, I would cycle back to showing what he had to do to become strong. That way I could keep it interesting and keep the viewer engaged in that way, regardless. Novel thinking aside. After he's done like poking fun at her, like disappearing and like reappearing right behind her, showing her that like I'm a better assassin than you. Or I'm faster than you and quieter than you and all these things. Eventually, he basically just says, okay, I'm out. And then he basically just like loses her immediately. But the, what do you call it? The one guy, this Ronin and his archer friend, find him. And it's because he operates under a different perception. Fuck it, I'll tell you guys now, this is the best time as any. So one of the series that I love to pieces is Drifters, and I'm pretty sure you guys know where this is going. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk, like to make a story about, is the notion of the Demon King. But also I really wanted to make a notion, again, that's the story of the Demon King, which was actually better and just than any other sort of like leadership. And I also like the notion of drifters, where there is, if you guys haven't seen this show, it's a fantastic show. I'd highly advise you watching it. It's such an amazing premise. But anyways, the notion is that there is this warlord, this fucking insane Japanese warlord who won so many battles, but he died by I think being betrayed by his son, and he basically gets taken to this another place to try to win this war in this other world. It's kind of a weird show, but it's fantastic. But anyways, this overlord guy, this very cruel, would do anything to win a fight kind of mentality, gets paired with this very honorable samurai guy, and it's such a beautiful series of showing that this samurai guy has his morals, his honor. The overlord, because he was betrayed by his own son, he basically takes a samurai guy and says, you're the right kind of leader. I'm the leader that chose to be a leader because I want power, I want to dominate, I want all these things. But if I could choose a leader who would be the best leader, period, it would be you. So he chooses this samurai guy against his will almost. He keeps, whenever there's a moment, he forces him to basically be no, he's going to be the king. I'm going to make this guy the king. But he also sees his son in this guy, except this guy is better than his son. He's kinder and more just. But it creates this beautiful, beautiful moment, or this kind of synergy of there's this guy who's really, really just, but has a shit ton of power. But then there's this guy who basically chooses to be honest with him about the evil, about again, there's a scene in the show of Drifters where he basically, there's a choice between desecrating the dead, but in doing so would make dynamite or gunpowder, which could change the tide of war for them. And he basically is hey, I know you don't like this. I know you think there's some sort of peace and honor and death. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't do this, millions are gonna die. So you can make the choice. You can either be this kind person and let all your people die, or you can do this thing that's a little morally weird, but it would mean 1,000 more good. Are you willing to take on that brunt? Can you handle that load? Can you handle that burden of throwing this away and maybe holding something else in its place? And will you be able to keep your goodness in doing something like that? And that kind of being the sentiment. And the show is beautiful because the overlord, this Japanese overlord kind of crazy person, who's relentless and ruthless, he kind of takes it upon himself to bear the evil so that the one guy doesn't have to. He plays he schemes better than anybody. He comes up with a plan better than anybody. And again, at every possible moment where he could take power for his own, he instead gives it to the other guy because he knows he's worthy of it. But he knows that he wouldn't do what needs to be done to attain the power fast enough to make a difference. So it's this beautiful symbiotic relationship of he knows he's the best person for the job, but he also knows that it's bad. He doesn't do everything perfectly, morally perfect. And the main character also battles with that almost. He almost wishes he had the courage to do what that needs to be done like the other guy does. But that main guy, the overlord, doesn't want him to be that because then he would lose the whole reason why he is what he is. He would just become him, this ravenous, power-hungry person. So that's exactly what we're doing in the thing. Also, they have this archer guy who's just fantastic as well, and he kind of fixes their power dynamic. But anyways, so yeah, that's basically, we're playing the same kind of world space. I think that's such a cool idea, especially for the story of the Demon King. But here's another thing. Well, we'll get into that at the very end, even though we're already going over our allotted time. Sorry, me and editing. So anyways, we're gonna really start pushing forward because I just need to start making headway. An idea I had was, again, the one dude, the overlord guy, the Japanese Ronin, and his archer friend is tracking him. They eventually they see that he's about to be attacked by something, and the main character is fully aware that he's going to be jumped by this thing.
So then the Ronin...
So he jumps, and then he fires a giant flintlock cannon into this beast's head, and it splatters, and it knocks him dead. And then the Ronin comes forth and is like, all right, kid, this is all wishful thinking, and I know it's really crazy, but hey, let's go get a beer. I'll it's okay. You don't need to change the world. I've seen it before. I'm not going to let you die out here. Let's go. And then they hear this scream, and it's this boy, out in the middle of the fucking forest. Why is he there? I don't know. We'll talk about it maybe later. I don't know. It's kind of unimportant. Regardless, the Ronin basically sees him. The archer takes out 3 of the of these like hellhounds, gunning it for this little kid who's like fallen to the ground. He's about to get murdered. And the Ronin kind of looks at him like, fuck, like here we go again. Like he's seen shit that's terrible, but he doesn't want to see like a little kid get mauled by a monster. Anyways, and then just like this, I want it to be the sound of like pure metal, like just force grinding through gravel, kind of like this just insane like level of boom. And basically the main character punches this beast that's about to hit the kid and just fucking splatters him like dust, like gone everywhere, just blood and guts splattered in his direction from one punch that he hit. Or maybe it's like a cannon, whatever you want is a power set to be. And anyways, fast forward, the Ronin is shocked at this and is like, okay, maybe this kid has some potential. Fast forward, he ends up he asks the kid, like the archer guy, to take back the kid and to catch up with them, because at this point the Ronin's like, okay, what was that? Like maybe there is something going. Fast forward. He fully believes him kind of at this point, but throughout the next couple weeks, he's now testing him constantly to see what kind of person he is. So he basically goes to this ruins because he's like, again, let's just say he has Doomslayer's tech, so he's able to like analyze things and find out where like the source of something is. So he physically finds out like like each one in this giant forest, there's domains. There's like these giant tombs where each time you go into it, you blow out this candle, and he feels like the smoke pulls to a different direction. So then they follow that smoke, and then the Ronin's like, what the fuck? Are we doing something? Are we finally are we going to be able to make progress? Fast forward. They get to the city again, and at this point the Ronin is like in him a really buddy. Same with the archer. They're really like communicating really well. And again, he keeps interacting with the other 7, and they're all kind of doing their own thing, but just it's kind of, again, they're kind of like, I helped a person not get mugged, you know, and it's just not stuff that's like actually making huge differences. So the Ronin guy, as to kind of test him, he starts like almost inadvertently nudging him in directions of like other mob bosses in the city. So he nudges him in the direction of, and each time he does it, there's like a special thing that happens. This is where your guys' imagination could go absolutely wild. But you have these mafia bosses essentially that represent a lot of the different like races in the show. And let's just say there's one that's like maybe it's like the orc. The orcs are ruled by this old granny lady. And anyways, one of the things that they find out is that like there's all like the orcs are running around this like city, kind of trying to find someone. It clearly looks like, and of course the Ronin guy kind of nudges him, and like he kind of would know where this kid would end up, because he's just tactically immensely smart in that way. Anyways, so the main character finds the kid, and the Ronin guy is like, oh, we found him. This is perfect. We could get leverage. We could do this. And then the main character starts walking, like without even like hearing him, basically. And he goes right to the orc lady's like kind of place, his old granny, knocks on the door, and she's kind of like, who the hell could that be? So she opens these giant fucking doors to the thing, and the main character basically just hands her like grandson, basically. And the old lady basically says like, thank you so much, like do you want a reward? And the main character is just like, no, it's, what are you talking about? Like this is your kid, like this is his home. He was alone and scared, whatever, and just walks away. And therefore to be this like almost twinkle in this like old lady who's like very much into like gang shit kind of thing, to be this like twinkle of like hope almost. Like there's this person who didn't want anything from me, and just helped, and that was it. You know what I mean? And they're like, in this place there is nothing without gain. Like there's nothing that you would do without trying to leverage something. So the fact that you would just give them this is almost, and it kind of comes from this place where like my whole family kind of has this like business sense of like, we don't have like, we're not, yeah, it's like if you take care of people, like your clients, and actually prioritize them and give them like good deals and actually try to do that, and they do the same for you, then it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship of like good business, essentially, like really good business. So that if you needed some like a thing really fast, and you've always gave us good business, we're gonna do that thing for you as soon as possible. We're gonna put you at the top of the list. We're gonna try to take care of you and stuff like that. So there's this level of like loyalty / financial business success that comes from being like honorable and like actually fair. and working with someone and like growing with someone and not just like trying to like get as much as you can and screw them, you know? It's not like that. So this is kind of like a spark of that. So this old lady's like, what? And this kind of thing every single couple days happens, where like this guy who's way smarter than he lets on and could be a mafia boss if he wanted. It could be like probably the head of like 6 of them because he's just that good. This overlord guy that stole from Drifter. He basically keeps nudging him against all these things. But anyways, long story short, the main character basically comes to the conclusion of the elves, half elves, tiny elves, dwarves, and like goblins and shit all have like no kind of stronghold here. So here's a scene that I thought would kind of echo this pretty well. Also, it kind of tells you into what the main character is. So, main character meets these tiny half elves. They can't get their contract completed for anything because they don't have that much money put up for the reward for this contract, but it's also deathly affecting them. So somehow the main character arrives in their kind of vicinity. They bring it up. They bring up that they wish they had more money to like pay people greater sums of money to actually like save them from wolves that keep attacking their trading or whatever. But they can't because every single time they go to try to trade anything, because they can make things really well, every single time they go to the market, they just get robbed because they have no protection. So they can't like charge more money, and this is kind of a snake eating its own tail. The mafia people, like the other kind of people, ask, like, they have to pay protection money, and all they do is steal from them. You know what I mean? So there's no protection happening. So these people are just getting fucked over like horribly. But the main character basically comes out of nowhere and it's like, oh, I'll do it. You say your people are almost dying. Like, what do you mean? I don't need any money. Like, your people are almost dying. Like, if you guys go, like, we'll all be in a worse state because you guys make so many beautiful inventions that help us all. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, the main character is constantly faced with this stupid reality of like, do these guys not know they're eating their own like foot? Like what's fucking going on? Like, you guys are just so stupid. They're like, you think power is what matters, but this person, if you bet on them, it could give you all the power in the world and could increase all of your living situations if you just help them and like build them up. Anyways, so the main character does those quests for them, doesn't ask for a penny, but the overlord guy sneaks in really quick and so it's like, okay, well, he's not accepting the money because we want to open up like a supply chain with you, and that way we can grow together. And that's my kind of angle, as the main character is just like that, but the overlord guy makes it a reality, almost starts building his empire for him. And his like subsequent network for him, and he tells him about it, of course. And the main character's kind of like, I don't even want this. Like, what's happening? But the overlord guy's like, no, bitch, you're gonna be leader. You don't even know it, but I'm gonna make you a leader, and you're gonna be the best fucking leader that you've ever lived. But this is the scene that I thought about. So eventually, let's say some things happen. You maybe save this like very dopey kind of ogre, maybe half ogre, half orc, half whatever, but he's not incredibly there. He's kind of dopey, and he kind of doesn't know how to like heat up food. Like, he's kind of that weird thing, but he has immense strength, and he's really big. So the main character basically helps him out and says like, hey, I think it'd be smart if you actually helped, like, you sided with these guys. These guys make immense like great inventions, and they can also like help you where you may fall short. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to find people who do something that you can't do, and offer them something that they can't do, and that's how you have a symbiotic, beautiful relationship, and that's how you actually grow, right? Like, he's like, how did you guys not know this shit? And they do. They just power corrupted and etc. And hope was dead and all these kinds of things. Regardless, so he ends up going and doing that. But so the big ogre guy who's dopey goes and helps the half elves, and he basically says, "I'll guard you in the market so you can sell your shit without getting robbed." So there's this giant like fucking dude hovering over them who's very sweet. I want this guy, like this dopey ogre guy, to be like the sweetest person you've ever seen in your life. So there's this scene that happens where they're walking through the market, and our main character just kind of going about, and he hears like this kind of scuffle happen, and then he just sees this ogre guy get like smashed into the brick wall basically, and just like crumble. And the main character kind of walks over with the Ronin guy beside him, and of course, what are the odds that they arrive in the market at the same time that this scuffle is happening? The Ronin guy knows the the way things work. So he's like, let's go to the market, and then he knows that shit's gonna happen. So he goes, and they see this nice dopey giant get like smashed into concrete and then falls to the ground. And of course the main character runs over and says like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? And then he turns over, or no, then the ogre kind of points, and then who's coming out of the crowd is this like is basically this clan. So the idea is that there's these people who've been kind of like shitting on the elves. Just again, it's stupid, but the notion is like, okay, you're gonna have to pay us protection money, but not only that, we're gonna take all of your inventions for our own benefit. Again, it's stupid. If they just were to work with them, they'd be able to make more for them, grow together. It just doesn't make any sense. So basically they're like thugs trying to strong arm this person. So they beat his muscle, the muscle that was protecting him. So they beat him up, and the one dude, let's say that the one dude's picked up the half elf by his like collar, and he's kind of like struggling to breathe, and he's like flapping his arms. The thug basically starts laughing. He's like, this is the guy you brought to like fight me, or this is the protection you brought. This is like pathetic. You still need us, kind of thing. People start whispering in the market, and by the way, business is still going on when this is taking place. So this is clearly not like a beatdown is not unusual in this market. So they start talking about like, oh, that's this mafia guild, or this mafia people's like enforcer, like this deadly enforcer who's insanely strong, and oh god, they really did it now. We're gonna have to start fast forwarding because it's already an hour and 36 minutes or 20. It's a lot in a podcast. But anyways, so the main character, after seeing that, he basically he's knelt down right beside the kind giant, and the main character basically stands right in front of the ogre, where he starts pointing, and then you stand right where he's pointing, so then he sees you. So the thug sees the main character, and he throws the elf to the ground, and the elf kind of says like, please run, like I don't want, like this guy, he just beat the shit out of him, you're gonna get like trashed, I don't want you to get hurt either, which only helps fuel the main character. Except the main character basically is like, yeah, I am the muscle. And the one dude basically lunges forward, the thug lunges forward, and this is where the story kind of sets in motion, guys, what the vibe is. The main character grabs his fucking arm and just snaps it, and then with that snap, and you hear the dude scream, and as he's being lifted up, with him breaking his arm and pulling it forward, he basically gets lifted into the air, and his hand just grabs his face and just smashes it into the ground, in the concrete. And you hear like a crack, grab, and just crash right into the ground. And then the market is dead silent. And then there's like this really cool scene where you can see almost like the what do you call it, the overlord, the guy, the Ronin, who's been kind of like pushing him in these directions to kind of see what he would do. His eyes start to like twinkle, like, you know how I said like when he first seen him, he's seen like finally there was hope introduced. Well, now that hope turned into a fire, because what the main character starts doing is beating the living shit out of this guy. I'm talking like he smashes his head into the ground, and his hands like wrapped around his whole fucking face, because again, like I say, he's just a big fucking like, yeah. He just starts beating the shit out of him on the ground. His face is starting to get splattered with blood. And I don't know if I want to do this or not, but let's say the one, like his Ronin friend, is just smiling again, like I said, his eyes are now like, oh, this guy has what it takes. Like I didn't know you had this part in you. So let's say the Ronin guy hands this one lady some money and says, heal him. So this woman's healing him as the main character is just beating the fuck out of him, and the whole market's dead silent. Everyone just shocked. Even the enforcer came with 2 bodyguards as well, like other enforcers. And again, I think the main enforcer is just so fucking strong to where these guys are like, if he's doing this to him, we're fucked. So again, he just keeps beating the fucking shit out of him, to the point where he's just a pile of mush, and he has like a bunch of blood drenched all over his face. And he finally gets up, and after he's done beating him, and the dude's like just a fucking puddle of mush almost, but he's still alive. What do you call it? The main guy walks over to one of the other enforcers as they're like trembling, like, what the fuck are you, kind of thing, and puts his hand on their shoulder and says, it could be anything. What I think it would be cool is if the main character understands, because he talks to the Ronin guy enough to where he understands what's kind of the ecosystem in the world, and he says something to the effect of, I'm a man of ideals, so money, power, anything like that means nothing to me. So if I ever see you mess with these people again, I won't stop. like I'll just keep going. Like maybe you want to and it kind of, I wanted it to hint at the idea of him being like, you want to retaliate? You want to, oh, maybe this pisses you off. Maybe you tell your boss that this really bothered you, and maybe you're upset about this. Maybe you're losing a client. You need to make an example of these elves. I will ruin every one of them. I will kill all of your people, anyone who you even know, on principle. Even if you kill all of them and there's no reason anymore, on principle, I'll kill every single one of you, and I won't even shudder. You know what I mean? So I wanted there to be this moment of like, oh, this person is incredibly kind, is empathetic, but he's also like an amazing leader at the forefront. Like, again, fully understanding the idea of, if only you guys would lift these people up, your entire way of being would be amazing. There are these tinkerers, these dwarves, these fantastic people that offer you a thing. The only thing they can't do is necessarily have power yet. But instead of stomping them out, why not try to make them flourish so that you can gain benefit from them flourishing as well? So anyways, yeah, there to be that kind of moment, and then for the main character to basically grab all the supplies that the one guy has and basically put it in on the elf's possession. So like basically the main character is caked in blood. He tells that to them. He moves his hand from the person's shoulder, the other enforcer's shoulder, and he leaves a blood stain on his hand. And then they kind of run off as they drag his person there. And then let's say that the Ronin's basically like, hey, he let him live. He's merciful and all that stuff, kind of like making a joke out of the whole thing. Anyways, the dude grabs the kind of sack filled with the elves' kind of gadgets and stuff and trinkets, and he picks it up and drops it right beside, like underneath the elf. And this is kind of like the moment where the whole market's just like, oh, okay, like you back this guy, and of course he drops the bag of his trinkets, and it's covered in blood because your hands are covered in blood, so it's just like this bloody bag sitting right underneath him. And the elf kind of looks at him like everyone's kind of frozen by what just took place. Like just this fucking, it wasn't even, again, that's why the Ronin guy got so happy, is because it wasn't like, I want to hurt you. It wasn't anything like that. It was so cold. It was cold and numb, and was very much the main character being like, I'm going to show all of you. If you come after this person again, I'm going to destroy you on principle. Like, it's not even about anything. It's just going to be relentless. Boom, boom, boom. I'm not going to feel anything. I'm not going to feel happy. I'm not going to feel rage. I'm just going to make it a point that you know never to come after this person again, and that to be the kind of sentiment. Anyways, so he hands the person the thing. Everyone's like, he walks over to the big giant guy, and the giant guy kind of shudders as he extends his hand. The giant guy finally realizes he's offering him a hand to help him up, and then he basically helps him up. And that to be one of the scenes that I would kind of want to hint at, and I think that would bulldoze into like dwarves asking him for help and asking him what to do, and all of these kind of other subliminal things, and other mob bosses being like, okay, well now there's this player in the field that we don't know about, but Granny is kind of behind him. Like Granny's just like, and let's say Granny was in the market too, like the Granny who he gave her the grandson to, let's say she's in the market too, like, okay. Like, at first I thought you might have just been like a naive, sweet person who's gonna get devoured by the world, but no. You're kind, but you're not someone to fuck with either. Anyways, again, we're gonna fast forward immensely right now. Essentially, we're gonna fast forward immensely. Everyone's doing their own thing. The main archer guy, they tell him to basically go set up shop at the like, because again, the thing that kind of puzzled everyone is how to get past this giant door. So there's this giant door with a bunch of insignias on the ground, and it's kind of surrounded by forest and some trees, but the door is so massive that everyone can see it from the whole thing. So they hear about like that there's this archer guy, and that the main character who like is one of the heroes that came to kind of open the second generation, or the 80th generation of people who have come there. He sees that there's like traffic there, and he notices that like this guy keeps going into the forest and like being 100% okay. What's happening? And also like they've been seemingly making headway. Like now the main character is getting into it, like getting into a flow of things, understands where to do things. Also, one of the things I didn't mention was the main character, day one, he goes and basically puts down a shrine, which again, if you've ever played the game Overlord, that's kind of how his power set works, and that very much plays into like the Demon King mythos, which is he sets up a shrine. It basically increases it allows him to like summon things without summoning them, and like they use the energy from the world to summon things, because this shrine pulls energy from this like dark location that makes these creatures, right? Anyways, that's just a side thing. Regardless, he tells the archer guy to go set up shop around right beside the door. But then he notices that the Queen's Guard, who have been kind of more and more been kind of trying to keep an eye on them because they're noticing that they're moving around with way too much certainty. They see that there's something's at the door, and eventually the insignias on the ground start lighting up one by one with like these lights. And the archer guy is sitting on a tree, and it looks like he's communicating with something. So then the queen the guards notify the queen about this, and then more guards start going to this kind of place, as well as the other mafia bosses, because they're like, wait, there's shit happening by the door. Like, this never happens. What's going on? It's like, is this a thing? Maybe this is like our chance to maybe like make a dent. Maybe it was just a time limiter thing. And all the heroes eventually make it to the thing.
Yeah, by thing, I mean the door. So the whole like village is basically converging on the door at this point.
And the main dude's just in this tree communicating, which all the mob bosses eventually kind of pick up on. Why is this guy up in the tree talking like frantically about some shit? Hard cut to Ronin Badass and the main character Junior Doomslayer, whatever. They're into this like huge labyrinth, and the main character is just smashing all of these huge fucking giants like they're nothing. And of course the Ronin's just laughing hysterically like, this fucking guy is treating these people like they're trash. Like these, and of course the Ronin also doesn't want to, like, he wants to show his value as in that way, so of course he's way more strategic. He'll like throw a piece of dynamite up in the air and like make a part of the cave crash down and kill one of these giants by his lonesome, which is huge, but isn't kind of the same level of like just absolute destruction as the main character, who's just like gone, summoning forth like a creature just to shred into this thing, and yeah. So anyways, there's this huge fucking giant hard cut to the main character like winding up, and then it cuts back to the main thing, the main gate, where everyone at this point is now huddled around the door, kind of wondering. Not everybody, but the lead mob bosses, the heroes that were kind of pulled, the 7 from Earth that were pulled, the queen and everything. They're kind of like wondering what's happening, and they're like, they hear this vibration happen, almost as like if this massive monolith just smashed into the ground. Which hints at the fact that the main character just fucking bodied this huge giant. Anyways, for there to be this scene, this is where I want to leave it, with a couple more things I want to add on there. But so everyone hears this like kind of this rumble, and then followed shortly there's like this followed maybe 30 minutes after, 20 minutes after they hear that rumble. The rumble starts getting almost like more and more and more. Almost like a vibration it turns into, and then they also hear this like heavy dragging sound, like almost wet, and like a chain kind of jingle, and all that stuff. And eventually they look, and there's the main character with a chain over his shoulder, slowly charging forward with each step being certain. And finally, everyone starts seeing what this warlord guy, this Ronin warlord guy from Drifters, is basically seeing, dragging behind him this huge fucking head, this huge monster head. And he's just dragging it, and the main character is again just focused, almost like he doesn't even see anybody else. And all the other people from the subsequent human thing are also like, what the fuck? Anyways, he grabs the head, and he quickly drags it, drops the chain, and then these kind of like spectral void hands grab it and shift it and move it directly in front of the door, right where the kind of like, again, there's like insignias on the ground. There's one in the center, almost where you needed to put something, and of course it's this giant fucking monster head, where he drags it and plops it down. And then as he does it, he kind of goes to sit back on this kind of basket that's on the ground. And then the doors start to open, and then there's just this blinding light. And then for there to be this iconic moment where, if you've ever seen Drifters, it's one of the coolest moments because of what it means. But both the Archer and the Ronin position themselves behind the main character, almost to show that like he's the king, he's the leader, we're his subjects, we're his what do they call it? Basically, like his generals or whatever, his like partners, but he is the leader. He is the head of the sphere. So when the main character is sitting there just to like, oh my god, I just had to drag that thing across the fucking forest. This sucks. He's just taking a minute, and of course the doors are slowly opening, so this light is starting to beam on through, and then both of them kind of angle themselves behind him, where it's just the shadow of this person sitting down on this box or this throne, with two silhouettes kind of standing beside him, and it's like this. To me, it's such a cool moment of like, oh, if I could only take that moment in Drifters and make it a little bit more fucking amped and crazy, then this would be what I do. And this is what everybody sees as like, there's this guy who looks like a king sitting on a throne with two people beside him who just did something that no one could ever do. And also there's a giant fucking head there. Like, it reshifts how everyone's seeing things. And then of course the door opens, and then there's the next giant world. So this is like a forest area. This could also be a forest area mixed in with some like fire, like a mountain kind of thing going on. We'll see in a minute. But anyways, for again, everyone's just like, what the fuck? The hero is kind of lost for words. The queen is kind of like, fuck, I bet on the wrong thing. And then for each one of the mob bosses, their perception completely shifts in this moment to be like, okay, I need to align myself with you, because beforehand they were like, maybe we could fuck him up. But also I would love if maybe the like elves and the dwarves that like he befriends whilst trying to figure out how to crack open the seal, kind of like shuffle towards him like, yeah, bitches, this is our boy. I would love that. Anyways, regardless, I wanted to talk to you guys about some other like subliminal things that I thought would be really cool. So that's kind of like the starting point. I tried to do my best. There's so many kind of little tiny things which I wanted to talk about with like the heroes and how he interacts with them and different things that I thought could showcase his personality better. I wanted to talk to you guys about the market scene because I feel like it establishes the mentality that he kind of has, which is like just... yeah, like he's not afraid to go completely berserk if it has the intended purpose of fear and like making it so that it doesn't happen again. Like he doesn't mind being the symbol of fear if it means that no one's gonna harm someone who doesn't deserve to be harmed at all. Especially if it makes a better world where like maybe eventually they'll start working with these people, or they'll see them as by me standing beside you, they'll see you as an equal, which therefore you can gain strength and make the world better through your own strength eventually. Anyways, but that to me is the other like main thing that I want to let you guys know about, is that's the way the story is going to progress for me, at least. Again, you could take it for whichever way you want. You could stop at a certain point where I started talking and just go in your own way. I also didn't really mention about his power structure, like how he's built. To me, I think he's like a mix of Overlord and Doomslayer, so he can like summon forth guns and fucking shred things with giant like military cannons, but he also can summon forth like a legion of shit and just get them to shred things as well. Kind of like Warframes. I don't know, I see him like summoning forth kind of like people that look like Warframes just to annihilate things for him. Anyways, but one of the things that I kind of want to do as a subliminal thing is showcase hell. Okay, this I almost wish I should just stop and make another part because we're almost at 2 hours. That's insane. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Anyways, I'll try to wrap this part up. But to me, I think it would be a beautiful, beautiful thing, and this would be the way I would tell the story from this point on. If we were going to hyper charge ourselves into the future, I would love for him, the main character, the Demon King, so to speak, to be this thing that unites all races, but also is accepting of what is absolute truth, not what is moral truth, but for him to find a way to make it okay regardless. So one of the things is I thought would be lovely is when you think of like bad things, like not bad things, I don't know how to put it, but like a person who is addicted to sex, or a person who loves drugs, like a druggie essentially, or like a homeless person who's all of those things. They're not good things, and a lot of it it's you experiencing I don't know, man, like sin. I really look at, like, because it's the Demon King thing, I look at it like sin and not sin. But to me, I would always like it. To me, I thought it'd be a really creative, cool idea if you could try to meld the two and make it make sense. So one of the things that the main character does when he eventually has like his he's like leading his own city basically underneath all of these kind of people, little, I guess, kind of like reincarnates a slime. I didn't really think about that, but it's where it kind of works. But again, it's not through like slime power, it's through like the Slayer's power. Anyways, regardless, if they had like a prostitute kind of like part of the city, but then they also had a drug part of the city. And you're like, oh my god, that's terrible. Like, but I also would love for the Ronin, the warlord, to be like, you're training warriors and you're training all of these people. They need an outlet of these things, or else they're going to bleed into other parts of society. So you need to kind of help them sate it or not. I know you may not like it, but yeah, like this is a part of, it's fucked up, but this is a part of human nature to some extent. Doesn't mean they have to do the human nature. That means everyone has the capacity for this horrible human part of themselves. So then for the main character to kind of meet him halfway and say, okay, we're gonna have a place for people to just get drugs and do drugs, but I'm gonna make it mandatory for there to be a healer on site always. So you're not allowed to do the drugs outside of, or whatever you do the drugs, you need to have a healer on standby. That's it. So you can do as much drugs as you want, but I'm not gonna let you die from it. Sorry. And then for there to be a place where, like, yeah, you can have as much crazy sex, whatever thing you want to have, but there's going to be a healer on standby. There's also going to be mandatory therapy, let's say, or something like that. So after you get your rocks off, you also have to talk about why, like, how you are, how's your headspace, and all that kind of stuff. So, like, for there to be this weird, like, understanding of how this is, but to make it as good as it possibly can be, or as safe as it possibly can be. And then for there also to be the other things, and not to just be like, here's all the nasty things and he makes it kind of better. I want it to be like, I don't know, here's a spa as well, where like you can completely recover. You can go to this place and just feel good and be okay. Here's this place where if you want to drink, you can drink like crazy, but if you have to drink, there's gonna have to be a healer on standby. Here's some things that these other people have made that make this better, like the elves, the dwarves, and all these things. And that to me is like the Demon King, except made in a better world. And you kind of make hell on Earth, except it's almost better than the actual situation, right? Like a place where you could do drugs, but also get help and also experience the highs that you maybe want to experience in a very, very safe way, to where you're not going to OD or get addicted and etc. That's the place, right? That way you could sate the parts of yourself that want to go wild without losing yourself in it, if that makes any sense. And then the same thing for the sex or anything like that, any sort of like carnal sin, he understands and is aware of, and tries to facilitate without vilifying, like understand and say, hey, if this is something that this needs to be done, then you do this. Of course, there are things I don't think I would ever I would just be like, no, there's certain things that are not okay, but don't want to kink shame, but still a big yuck. But yeah, to me, that to be the underlying. Also, if I could give you guys any sort of like border about like try to do this, I think it would be pretty fun. Not fun, that's not the great word, but it's like a way of kind of giving yourself some sort of border, so you're not just running rampant, but the idea of, okay, what is kind of a moral issue which I could kind of help make less shit and less crazy, you know what I mean? Ladies and gentlemen, this might very well be the longest fucking podcast video I've ever made. It's brutal. It's almost 2 hours long, and I skipped over a monstrous amount of stuff. But I try to give you guys as much as I possibly could. Again, the messing around with ideas of like, how do I get the Doomslayer in a story? How do I make it like actually valuable and make sense? How do I? And again, I kind of butchered some of the ideas because like I would like to make it a point to like go back and talk to you guys about why the main character doesn't hate the Doomslayer for doing the things he did to him. Because again, yeah. Also, I would want to go back and like explain how the main character attained strength that he did, combat experience like he did. But again, I would like to give the viewer a tease of like, oh no, he was stuck in like a death loop where he had to figure it out basically, and that's just a tease of the nightmare that he went through. And then for there to be like, again, this overarching story of like the Demon King, except it's more about like a person understanding the carnal nature, or the sin, or the nature of people, and being able to be like, okay, well, how do we allow people to experience the nature without drowning themselves in the horribleness that can come with overdosing or doing too much of one thing? And him being this realist of like, okay, well, there's a way to win for everybody. There's a way to like kind of make this make sense. And then for him to also be this like very charismatic kind of like good communicator, but to also not be very good with like politics stuff, which is where Ronin and that half-elf come in hand really, really heavily. And then for there to be this kind of other thing, which you can, my phone's going nuts, and for there to be this kind of other thing where people can, like the heroes or the 7 other people from Earth, how they're kind of reacting to him and kind of being this like filter of like, what the fuck. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's basically it. I would love to know what you guys think. I'm happy that, well, this is the second part of the series, even though this is the thing I'm filming first. That I really do want to go back and let you guys know all my thoughts about the previous story that I was telling you guys about, like the whole monster situation, of all the kind of bullet points that I thought about when I was doing that. But, ladies and gentlemen, you've been nothing shy of lovely. Thank you so much for hearing me out and hearing my random crazy mind and stories that I've been thinking about, and cool ideas that I thought maybe would be cool if you use them through this filter and all that mental nonsense. Thank you so much for hearing me out, especially for 2 hours. If you're one of the people who made it this far, I don't deserve you. I don't know why I have you, frankly. I did nothing to earn it, and I'm sorry. Love you, and bye.